Nano Machine by Hanjo Leolia. Chapter 439. Guardian of Changbai Mountain. Part 1. The base of the forces of justice. The main conference venue where all major matters of the forces of justice and the Yulan were decided. Due to keeping the other major powers in check and the other major roles they played as one of the three major factions, the leaders couldn't gather for quite some time. Moreover, especially since the leaders were scrambling to uncover the Blade God's 6 martial clans' plan, it took even more time. However, despite waiting such a long time, the leaders of the forces of justice had gathered. The number of leaders gathered couldn't be compared to when they were discussing the non-aggression treaty. At the top was the seat of the great leader. On either side of him were Foreign Affairs Gam Woon Seo and Internal Affairs Ha Ji Jin. At the first seat on the right side of the table, people were seated in sequential order by military rank. First leader, Shangxi Sword Master, Mu Guqian. Second leader, Shaolin Temple's head, Saint Gakyun. Fourth leader, Hangsan Clan, under the Shaolin Temple, Monk Safi. Fifth leader, Wudong Clan, Hyun Jinja. Sixth leader, Mount Hua Clan, Peng Chungwan. Eighth leader, head of the Four Skies Clan, Dang Pilyun. 10th leader, elder of the Jiang Clan, Ho Hyanjia. 11th leader, Beggars Association head, Hong Palwu. 12th leader, elder of the Kong Tong Clan, Elder Chong Su. 13th leader, Jigul Clan head, Jigul Young. 14th leader, Zhongnam Clan, Elder Jia King. 16th leader, Jinju family head, Yun Youngin. 17th leader, Habuk Clan's head, Pengyu. In addition to the leaders and heads of each clan, each combat group that held power stood in the room. The only ones who couldn't attend were 4 leaders and 2 commanders. Of course, they had reasons for not being able to attend. They were 7th leader Moyang Kong, who hadn't returned from the north, Huan Bo Nung, who died in the North Sea, the head of the Namgung clan who died in the Jin Castle, and the 9th leader who was killed in a surprise attack by the Blade God's 6 martial clan in his province. And the 2 commanders who didn't attend were Yun Buso, who was depressed, and Kong Soa, who went to the north and lost his life. The atmosphere isn't that serious. Pleng Chungwan of the Mount Hua clan thought while looking at the room. The heads of each clan had gathered. With such strong people gathered, the atmosphere should have been intense. Why were we summoned so urgently? What happened? For the ones who didn't know, it was suspenseful, so they wondered why. The great leader looked at all the leaders with a hardened expression. First leader Mu Guqian, who was the closest to Imak, was the one who opened his mouth. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to the leaders and commanders who responded to the emergency order. We don't have much time, so I'll get right to the point. Whoa! Everyone knew that something had happened. What was the reason for such an emergency meeting that one of the 5 strongest warriors, Imak, had to call for them right away? Come in. As the order from Imak fell, a man in a black uniform entered the room. The man, with half-white hair and drooping eyes, was Mak Weizhong, the temporary captain of the Black Shadow Group. Why is it that person? Lieutenant Mak? Wasn't he part of the Norse contingent? A few people who knew him were puzzled. No one was allowed to attend the meetings of the leaders unless they were a commander or above. Didn't he leave for the North Sea with Commander Kong? In their last meeting, there were a few leaders who knew that Kong Soa, the second son of Imak, was sent to the North Sea as the leader of the contingent. But the contingent hadn't returned, so why was this man back? Thud. The new commander of the Black Shadow Group, Mak Weizhong, greets the leaders. Commander? Everyone was shocked, unable to understand what happened. The commander of the Black Shadow Group is Kong Soa, and he was the one who created the group. There was no way he would give up the title. Unless he died. Great leader, what does this mean? Second leader, Gak Yen, was asking the question when Emok cut off his words. First, we will listen to his report. Ba. It was embarrassing that he was asked to be quiet, so Gak Yen kept mumbling sutras. Unless something happened, there was no way that their great leader would act as such. At that, Mak Waijong spoke. I will get to the main point. We have found the base of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan. Blade God 6 Martial Clan. Mumble. Whispering and mumbling rose at the unexpected news. After a portion of their province was taken away, the leaders tried their best to find their base. Despite creating several troops, everyone went missing, and no one managed to get any information. At that moment, one leader raised his hand while speaking. Hold your horses. Now, the new commander, Commander Mac, found something that no leader has been able to find until now. At that, Mak Waijong spoke with a light smile. Yes. Leader. Where the hell is this so-called place? Pengyu, the head of the Ping family, who lost his arm after meeting Chen Youan in the Imperial Palace, asked. The other leaders focused on Mak Waijong, wondering what his answer would be. As everyone looked at him, waiting for an answer, he pointed to Zhejiang province, which was under the Yulin's territory. It's right here. Isn't that Mount Huang? The place where Mak Waijong pointed to was Mount Huang of Zhejiang province. A scenic spot, but the mountains around it were rough and surrounded by steep peaks. If it was there, then it was the best place to hide their base. Ah. This is why the emergency meeting was issued? All the leaders now understood the reason. If what they found was indeed true, it made sense to call in all the leaders. If the base could be identified for sure, which no one knew until now, Yulin could wage war. Commander Mac. That's great. This achievement deserves great praise. Jekyll Young, the head of the Jekyll clan, spoke in an excited voice. But not everyone believed that. Hong Palwu spoke. How did Commander Mac find their base? Up until now, even the Beggars Association members over there always ended up dying. After striking the forts of Yulin, the defense against the Blade God 6 Martial Clan had become firm. Even the beggars, who were known to be information gatherers, were killed or disappeared after entering the Zhejiang province, which was why he felt suspicious about it. I understand why you think that way. But please see this first, leader. At the request of Mak Waijong, the great leader nodded his head. As the room doors opened, two men came in with something much larger than an average cart. This? Goodness! Everyone was shocked by what they saw. What was in the cart was the head of the dragon with his eyes turned over. Hian Jinjia, a leader, shouted in shock. The dragon turtle. It was the head of the dead dragon. The head size itself resembled the legends of the dragon. Ba. Gak Yen closed his eyes at the sight. Most of the other leaders who saw it got up from their seats to get a better look at the severed head of the dragon. Drrr. It wasn't the end of the meeting. Another cart came in, loaded with something hidden in woven straw cloth. Decomposing corpses were inside it. However, each body was unique. Head is? Their heads exploded. Yuk. Everyone covered their noses at the same time. Hong Palwu burst out at the sight of dead corpses. What the hell are these corpses? They're members, masters of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan. Hong Palwu, who was shocked, approached the corpses at the word master. There was a simple way to know if one was from the Blade God 6 Martial Clan. Those belonging to the clan, the ones who were masters, had restrictions placed on them, making sure that no information would leak even when captured. Tack. Hong Palwu's eyes trembled as one hand covered his nose, and the other looked for the pulse. The same symptoms that the other corpses of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan in the past had. True. He is right. When the verification was done, the room became noisy. At that, Emok spoke in a loud voice. "I hope everyone quiets down and goes back to their seats." At the loud order from Emok, everyone went back to their seats, and the room became silent. When it became silent, Emok brought up the main topic. "As we have all seen, there is the head of the dragon and then corpses of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan. Commander Mac of the Black Shadow Group has successfully tracked those who were fleeing from the North Sea and found the base of that beastly clan and captured the dragon's head." At the brief praise from the great leader, Mac Weijong nodded his head. It wasn't something to be happy about. Certainly, according to the words of the great leader, it was indeed a great achievement for the forces of justice. It was something that no one else has ever accompanied. "The evidence is solid, but I have a question." Someone raised the hand with doubt. It was Elder Changsu. He had resigned from the position of leader, but when he managed to win the bet he placed against Pengyu, he was given his position back. "What do you mean? Elder Changsu?" "Of course, the head and corpses seem very credible, and I will acknowledge them, but how did you find their base, which no one else managed to find?" Mac Weijong tried to avoid that question previously too. Moreover, if they tried to bring out a theory that he could have stolen the dragon's head and returned, they wouldn't trust him at all. To that, Mac Weijong answered without hesitation. "What Elder Changsu asks is right. If they had their full strength, I wouldn't have come back alive." Now, do you mean to say that they weren't their usual selves?" "Yes. When I secretly pursued them and found their base in Mount Huang, almost all their forces seemed tired. If we all head there right away, we will be able to subdue them." "Ah." At those words from Mac Weijong, everyone looked at each other. They could guess how important this meeting was. Are we finally going to move? Emok must have decided to wage an all-out war against the Blade God 6 Martial Clan. All the leaders who ran the Yulin met at one place, the Forces of Justice's base. If what he says is true, if they gathered all their power and went to their base, they would wipe out the entire clan. Of course, only if it was clear that the Yulin had the upper hand would a war do any good. Military leader. Yes. At the call from Emok, the military leader, Ubmryo, seated to the right, got up. He took out 3 chess pieces from his pocket and placed one knight on the so-called base of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan. Tack. Then, 2 more knights were placed on the left and upper sides of the mountain. 2 rooks were placed on the north and left sides. King? When everyone was puzzled, Ubmryo opened his mouth. This is information that the great leader recently got from the forces of evil. Recently, the head of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan, the Blade Lord, led his army to Lhasa. Ugh. That means? The leaders couldn't help but be shocked at the unexpected news. If so, their main base was indeed empty. Emok spoke while pointing to the 2 knights on the north. Perhaps some might already know this, but the clan seems to have aimed all their power into getting the core of the dragon in the North Sea. Whoa. When Emok said that, those who didn't understand began to mumble at the sudden realization. The fact that the contingent went north was made public, but the reason wasn't disclosed. Who knew that the dragon, a spirit beast, was what the Blade God 6 Martial Clan was aiming for? Ubmryo spoke. From the information gathered so far, we found out that their goal is to conquer the entire Jianghu. Ubmryo. He had the official position of military leader, which meant he was the military commander of the Yulin. Ever since the Blade God 6 Martial Clan turned into a pain for Yulin, he asked numerous people as well as Jigul Sohi with numerous commissions and analyzed them. At that time, Mac Weijong brought in his information, making him realize what the Blade God 6 Martial Clan was aiming for. They targeted the Imperial Palace, the North Sea, and the Spirit Beast in Lhasa. Their purpose became clear. Their reason for constantly cornering the other factions while avoiding any counterattacks, everything came clear. The spirit beasts? Which means they are aiming to covet the cores, just like they did with the flame Qilin in the palace. Ubm Rao nodded in response to Gakyen's question and pulled something out of his sleeve. A book. Moral Sutras of Heaven? It was one of the 3 great books. A book that talked about myths and legends, which the scholars didn't acknowledge. What about that book? At that, he turned to a page and spoke. As Saint Gakyen said, the Blade God's 6 martial clan are targeting the spirit beasts. To be precise, they are aiming for the cores of the spirit beasts. The cores? For the sake of power? Well, honestly, it's just another legend in this book, but seeing how they are aiming for the cores of the 5 spirit beasts, I'm certain. What the hell is that? Just answer already. Hong Palwu urged him as he was running out of patience. They seem to believe that immortality is possible. Immortality? It said here that the one who attains the 5 cores of the beasts will attain eternal immortality. All the leaders and commanders who were listening thought that it had to be a mistake. Everyone knew that the core of any spirit beast would give immense power and even prolong a person's life. However, the term eternal immortality meant real immortality. Chapter 440. Guardian of Changbai Mountain. Part 2. Hong Palwu of the Beggars Association asked with a frown. Hold on. Unless this old man has heard something wrong, you are actually referring to the immortality that was supposedly coveted by some emperor? Yes. Mumble. Immortality? This has to be some kind of joke. Does the Blade God's 6 martial clan really believe in such bizarre legends? Did they really analyze our enemies? The room became noisier. It was a natural reaction when the military commander of the Forces of Justice decided to base his findings on a mysterious book which the scholars didn't even acknowledge. At that, the great leader spoke in a loud voice. Of course, not many people believe it. That is also the case with this great leader. However, the important thing isn't the concept of immortality. According to the information gathered by the military commander and Commander Mac, we know we can corner those bastards. Military commander. At those words, Ubik Ryo pulled out 2 knights with the letters of conquest written on them. He placed one knight on Mount Huang, the base of the Blade God's 6 martial clan, and the other on the Changbai Mountains southeast of Liaoning province. As everyone looked there, Ubm Ryo opened his mouth. The great leader has decided to wage an all-out war for the future of Yulin. The words of an all-out war made all the leaders in the room become serious. There have been many minor wars between the 3 major factions for the past decades, but there has never been an all-out war. However, now they were planning for such a war. Was this why the commander of the West was called? But, if we decide to move, wouldn't the forces of evil in the West put us in a dangerous situation? Hian Jinjia, an elder of the Wudong clan, was concerned about it. As if reading his thoughts, Ubm Ryo explained. Currently, the forces of evil is in a very chaotic state as a civil war is going on. And this is the perfect time for us to wage war. What about the demonic cult? Since we are allies with them and we have decided to go all out, wouldn't having them with us reduce the amount of damage that we take? From the Blade God's 6 martial clan? Jiggle Young of the Jiggle clan asked. At those words, all the leaders nodded their heads. When going to the war against the Blade God's 6 martial clan, if the demonic cult participates, then the Yulin would get to conserve their power. In addition, there were concerns that the demonic cult would stab them in the back. At that moment, a strong objection was raised by a man. There is no need to get help from the demonic cult in this all-out war. And as the military commander has mentioned, this is for the sake of the future of Yulin and the forces of justice. Anger rose in the man's eyes as he spoke. Great leader, What does this mean? According to the reports from Commander Mac, the demonic cult and their lord are in the North Sea. The demonic cult is in the North Sea? Everyone seemed puzzled at the unexpected information. Not long ago, they knew that the demonic cult was busy with the establishment of their new academy. So why did the lord of the demonic cult head to the North Sea all of a sudden? Mac Weijong resolved the doubts of the leaders. The core of the dragon turtle has gone into the hands of the demonic cult's lord, Chun Yuan. He is also aiming for the other cores, just like the Blade God 6 martial clan. The lord of demonic cult is aiming for the cores of the spirit beasts. Everyone's complexion darkened. That monster, which was difficult for them to handle without any cores, was aiming for the cores? Which meant, if the core did fall into his hands, then Chun Yuan must have gotten stronger than before. Pengyu spoke. No. I don't know about this concept of immortality, but isn't it too dangerous to let that core enter into the hands of that monster? UBM Ryo answered. The war is to prevent that from happening. Huh? What do you mean? The core has already gone to him, how do you plan on preventing that? It isn't over yet. UBM Ryo pointed his finger at Changbai Mountain. I don't know about the spirit beasts and stuff. However, according to the rumors, there is a legend about the Feng Bo in Changbai Mountain. No, are you talking about the white tiger? The leaders close to the mountains, who heard of the rumors, immediately mumbled the words white tiger. They heard about some magical beast walking around in Changbai Mountain. But they never expected it to be a spirit beast. This book here talks about one of the 5 spirit beasts, the Feng Bo. If you look at the description in here, it resembles the white tiger, a spirit beast in Changbai Mountain. God. If the white tiger was indeed a spirit beast, then it's bound to have a core. Then, as UBM Ryo mentioned before, the spirit beast would surely be targeted by either the Blade God 6 martial clan or the demonic cult or both. If either of those 2 clans gets the core, then the Yulin is bound to disappear in an instant. Shouldn't we stop them? Right. The all-out war is for our sake. UBM Ryo pointed to the knight on the map, indicating the power of the faction. From now on, the great leader will divide the forces into 2 groups, which will head for Mount Huang and the Changbai Mountains. All the leaders listened to the entire plan without raising any doubts. Perhaps, it was because this all-out war would determine the future of the Yulin. Smirk. The corners of Mac Weijong's lips went up while looking at the leaders and commanders of the forces of justice. Commander Kong, your death has turned into a spark which gives rise to a huge flame. At the same time, the Great Plains. The procession of the demonic cult's warriors continued in the southeast direction. In 5 days, they crossed half of the Great Plains. Unlike when they first entered the place for the first time, despite coming across barbarians, they never attacked them. The news that Asura, the war chief who had hegemony over the Great Plains, got both his arms cut off spread all throughout the land. Unknowingly, Chun Yuan, who was known as the demon god, turned into an object of fear among the barbarians. Swoosh! The warriors of the demonic cult lit bonfires here and there. As the day darkened, the procession stopped, and the people were busy setting up fires. Unlike when they were in a hurry, because of the dragon, they headed south this time and had sufficient rest. Are those Gur? Hubong looked amazed at the barracks and other things they brought from the Ice Palace. The barracks they brought were from the Ice Palace, which were portable ones that could be used in the Great Plains. They had a cylindrical wall and a dome top. Can we use that? Lieutenant Hu, didn't you say that you wanted to try it? Dan Jushin asked. Throughout the journey, Hubong followed Dan Jushin's horse, saying that their tents were weird, and he insisted that he should be given one. Oh. The inside is so cool. I'm glad you like it. Hubong was elated when he entered the Gur. This man, Hu Bong, didn't seem to be that skilled, but his energy seemed like he was at the level of an elder. Dan Jishan asked Mong Mu, the sixth elder, who was looking at the girl from close by. Do you want one too? I'm fine. Rather. I hope you could give one to our Lord. Ah. Mong Mu thought that Dan Jishan didn't want to give one to Chen Yuan. But the truth was when he looked around, he couldn't find Chen Yuan. The Lord is? Probably with the former Lord. Ah, are they training? I guess so. They all knew that Chen Yuan and Chen Inji would separate themselves from the troops to train. A bonfire was lit in a place on a meadow a few miles away from the troops, and an old man was wielding a sword. The old man with little hairs growing out like a beard was the former Lord, Chen Inji. Chow. 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 His sword, which was unfolding in front of the fire, was the sword force of the sky demon. The splendid trajectory of the sword unfolded. Chen Inji's sword, which unfolded until the fourth form, filled him with satisfaction. That was wonderful, grandfather. Thank you. You know this, by following the basics. Chen Inji realized how simple the technique Chen Ma made was. Chen Ma, who made the sword force of the sky demon, was a genius. Chen Inji didn't know that by subsequently using each form, the technique only became stronger. Upsetting. Chen Inji felt lost. It would have been better if he had built up more internal energy before using the technique, but it was impossible for him to change from reverse health preservation back to the demonic cult's way that easily. Oh, would you like to practice the fifth one too? The fifth form is a lot harder than you think. The theory was clear. However, it wasn't easy to unify 24 swords into one. Still, Chen Inji was proud as he could properly learn the technique. Yowana, I'm sorry for what you had to go through. Chen Inji apologized to Yowan. In a way, he should be the one who taught his grandson, but now, his grandson was the one teaching him. No. Since you are the former lord, learning this sword isn't so weird. However, the fact that this old man, who resigned from the position of the lord, is trying to learn the martial arts of the cult, the best technique. Not the best. At Chen Yuan's words, Chen Inji was puzzled. The sword force of the sky demon was the best martial art, created by their ancestor. However, the second generation Chen Ma denied that it was the best. What do you mean? The sky demon sword isn't the best? Chen Yuan pondered for a while, before opening his mouth, to explain. He didn't want to tell him, but then Chen Inji had devoted his life for the sake of the demonic cult, which meant that he deserved to know it. On the valley cliff, the sword left behind by Chen Ma was unfinished. Unfinished? Chen Inji titled his head at the words he was hearing for the first time. At that, Chen Yuan lifted his sword and spoke. You'll understand it better if you see it for yourself. With those words, Chen Yuan moved, drawing a delicate trail with his sword under the moonlit night, and unfolded the sword. Chow. 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 Chen Inji's eyes trembled as he looked at Chen Yuan's sword. He thought that he couldn't be shocked anymore, but he was wrong. He couldn't help but be astonished when he saw the true sword. The swordplay of Chen Yuan was thrilling. How did you get that sword? If his eyes weren't seeing things wrong, the new sword was mixed with the sword force of the sky demon and the extreme art of the blade god. The sword was turning into something which would be difficult for the human body to unfold. Is this really a sword that humans can use? When he finished the sword, Chen Yuan spoke in a calm voice to Chen Inji, who was shocked. This is it. That is the unfinished sword that the ancestor made? Strictly speaking, it was a sword technique that no one tried to complete. When Chen Inji was in thought, Chen Yuan spoke. I named it Sword Art of the Demon God. Sword Art of the Demon God. This legendary sword technique was something that no one except for Chen Yuan could learn. Chapter 441. Guardian of Changbai Mountain. Part 3. After 4 days of procession, they were finally moving towards Changbai and arrived at the northern border of Liaoning province. In the meantime, some changes occurred. It wasn't just the former Lord Chen Enji who mastered the sword force of the Sky Demon. Crackle! Heeing! Thunder chi emanated from the body, making the horse get excited. Despite being good at handling horses, he was unable to stop the horse from running wild. Tat! Eventually, he had to get off the horse. Ha ha ha! If you have trouble controlling the thunder chi, you might not be able to ride a horse for the rest of your life. Ko Wonger laughed wildly and made fun of the man who came down from the horse. The person he laughed at was Baki, the third sword of the 6 swords. Crackle! Lightning flashed across his entire body. TCH! He tried several times to ride a horse but kept failing again and again due to his body unconsciously releasing thunder chi. How did Baki end up getting thunder chi? A small trigger made it happen. The members of the 6 swords, who had been together ever since the days of the academy, often honed their skills through battles among themselves. Originally, Baki used to fight against Ko Wonger. However, as if Mun Ku becoming stronger wasn't enough, Ko Wonger had suddenly reached the superior master level. In order to overcome the huge gap between them, he learned a new martial art created by Chen Yuan, but that wasn't enough to fill the gap between them. Meanwhile, the worst thing happened to him. Wah! I won for the first time. He. He ended up losing to Hubong. Unlike the other 6 swords, Hubong always followed Chen Yuan and gained experience, and somehow Hubong seemed different. Unbelievable. For me to lose to Hubong. He was incomparable to the past. It wasn't like he hated Hubong, but it was true that he hated Hubong slightly as a martial artist. And the feeling of losing within 5 seconds was even more miserable. This created a ripple inside Baki, who had no other desire but to be the strongest under his lord, Chen Yuan. I must be crazy. Bravely, he drank the dragon's blood. All the warriors of the demonic cult had seen how the officials of the North Sea Ice Palace who drank the blood had turned into soot, so they knew that it had to be diluted. However, Hubong succeeded in taking in the blood of the flame Qilin, but it was done because Hubong was in a drastic situation. Even if Baki died, he wanted to try it. And the result? Crackle! Just like Hubong, who was able to generate flame chi, he got thunder chi. Of course, he was on the verge of death. If it wasn't for Chen Yuan, who appeared at the right moment and calmed the raging thunder chi in his body, Baki would have died. However, despite absorbing the thunder chi, controlling it was difficult. It's different from Hubong. It may be because the dragon died recently, so more chi seems to remain in the blood. Chen Yuan judged it as such. And his prediction was almost right. The blood of the flame Qilin in the shrine was diluted for ages. If the thunder chi in his body can be completely circulated, then the thunder chi won't come out unconsciously. That was what the former Lord, Chen Enji, had said after checking Baki's condition. At first, he couldn't understand what Chen Enji was saying, but then he explained it in an easy-to-understand manner. You need to reach the superior master level. What? If reaching that level was an easy task, then Baki would have climbed it at once. Recalling that Hubong was much lower than him when taking in the blood of the flame Qilin, Baki thought that it would be the same for him. He managed to take in the thunder chi, but he didn't manage to level up. Were Hubong's qualities superior to mine? He was confused. In the academy, Hubong was the weakest. Baki couldn't understand just how much Hubong had grown. Looking back at Hubong, who was riding his horse, Baki sighed. Hubong never wanted to compete with anyone. He was just faithful to his responsibilities, and he attained enlightenment as if he was being rewarded for it. I was stupid. He is he, and I am me. He came to that realization. Martial arts wasn't something that could be treated hastily. Rather than being envious of Hubong or Ko Wonger, it was important for Baki to steadily walk on his own path. Crackle. Crackle. Kook. When he relaxed a little, the thunder chi got released once again. Hubong, riding his horse, spoke with a serious voice. I understand Baki's feelings. With great power comes great responsibility. This bastard. Baki turned angry at the words, which didn't seem to console his emotions. But the words that followed. I, too, couldn't sleep for nights as I was trying to suppress the sweltering heat in my body. He. It was close to a joke. To be pushed by this guy. His heart, which tried to acknowledge Hubong, disappeared. And he understood one thing, he had to work very hard to get ahead of Hubong. Ugh. Baki. Hubong was embarrassed by Baki's attitude, which seemed to ignore Hubong. Chun-Inji, the former lord, looked at them with a smile. You've got interesting people. Chen Youan, who was riding alongside him, nodded. When he first met Hubong, he was trying to oppress Chen Youan, but now he was someone who brightens everyone's mood. Chen Youan was more than satisfied with having Hubong as his subordinate. It was then when someone riding a horse caught up with them. You see, a called for me? It was Moyang Yu, the son of Moyang Kong. He looked nervous every time he went to Chen Youan. Since we are close to Liaoning, you can guide us to Changbai from here. Lord Chen. Are you really going to Changbai Mountain? The last time they talked about Changbai Mountain, Moyang Yu had a dark expression on his face. However, even now, he seemed to have the same reaction, as if he knew something about that mountain. At Moyang Yu's actions, sixth elder Mong Mu, who was next to him, asked. You are only asked to provide guidance. How dare you question the plans of the Lord? Sh. Ah. Chen Youan raised his hand and interrupted him. And asked Moyang Yu. Why are you looking at me like that? At first, he thought that maybe Moyang Yu was intimidated by his presence, but it didn't seem like that was the only reason. After hesitating for a while, Moyang Yu opened his mouth. Outsiders might not know, but there is an unwritten rule for people living in Liaoning province. Unwritten rule? What is it? The rule states that one should never enter Changbai Mountain. What? Their destination was that very mountain. According to Chun-Inji's information, the Feng Bo is the spirit beast inside Changbai Mountain. However, there is an unwritten rule that no one should enter that mountain, which sounded absurd. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't mean to say it like that. It was just something that my father and grandfather always told me to follow. Because of that, despite being from Liaoning province, I have never even been to the beginning of the mountain in my entire life. What kind of unwritten rule is that? Sixth elder Mong Mu clicked his tongue. He knew that the Changbai Mountain was right between the two countries. And no one country could control the entire mountain. I'm telling the truth. You have no idea why? My grandfather said that there was a monster guarding the entrance of the mountain. And if I didn't want to die, he told me not to go to that place. Monster? Chen Youan tilted his head as he sent a telepathic message to Chun-Inji. Maybe he is talking about the white tiger. It was just a random guess. When Chen Youan waited, Chun-Inji sent his response. I don't remember it perfectly, but somehow, this old man remembers hearing something like that. Sorry? The people of the Blade God 6 martial clan used to talk about the monster protecting Changbai Mountain. However, if this old man's guess is correct, then us entering might be difficult, just like the child has said. What the hell was in Changbai Mountain? Do you have any guess as to who or what is in there? At Chen Youan's question, Chun-Inji looked into his eyes and responded. East God. 2 days ago. The area where the southern border of the Jilin province met with the eastern border of the Liaoning province. The land to Changbai mountain was steep, and the land vibrated with hundreds of hooves and thousands of steps. Doo-doo-dud. As the land shook, a large army was advancing. In the middle, there were flags that held the symbol of justice, fluttering in the wind. The large army belonged to the Yulin. The army had 5,000 members in different uniforms, made up of elite soldiers and various clans. Those who rode at the forefront were 7 leaders of the forces of justice and some commanders. Leader Mu Guqion, the commander along with leader Gakyan of the Shaolin Temple, 3rd leader Monk Safi, 11th leader Hong Palwu, 10th leader Ho Hyanjia, 16th leader Yan Yongin, and 17th leader Pengyu were all heading for Changbai mountain. Behind them was the new commander, Mak Weizhong, followed by 5 more commanders and 50 smaller clan heads. Thud. Thud. This is the first time we've moved like this. Ho Hyanjia, who was riding the horse, clicked his tongue as he watched the large army follow them. They were all members of the Yulin faction. All the people in the army were elite warriors. With this force, if they wanted to, they could even destroy a castle in half a day. Ba. I don't know if taking this many people to Changbai is right. Monk Safi, who was riding next to him, spoke. Ubm Ryo, who was in charge of the operation, had only let a measly number of warriors stay behind to defend each clan, and every elite who could be found was gathered and sent to Changbai mountain. I also share the same opinion as Monk Safi. It would have been better to give more people to the unit raiding their base. At those words, Hong Palwu spoke. Despite hearing about the operation, I don't understand why so much power is being sent with us. Leader Hong Palwu. It isn't like that. The reason that so many people are being sent to the mountain is that the core has to be obtained by us. It wasn't understandable. Even though the spirit beasts are known to be strong, with the force of Yulin, they would be able to get to the core in less than half a day. Gakyan, who was listening to it, spoke. Ba. Leader Ho might not be familiar as it hasn't been long since you turned into a leader. What do you mean? Saint? Why do you think that all the top-rank warriors and the leaders are being pushed to Changbai mountain? To persuade the guardian of Changbai mountain? Even if he is one of the 5 strongest warriors. It has nothing to do with being the 5 strongest warriors. Before he could finish, Hong Palwu intervened. What is that supposed to mean? That monster is locked up in Changbai mountain and didn't take a single step out of there. If that monster decided to move in earnest, maybe that monster would be called the best in Wulin. The best in Wulin? Hong Palwu's answer made Ho Hyanjia doubt his ears. He knew that this monster was the oldest of the 5 strongest warriors. However, he could understand why Mok and the other leaders were so scared of this person. Honestly, it isn't just about the talks, but if the great leader was right, our plan isn't just to convince him, as he is someone that can deal with the demon god. It was one of the 3 orders they received from Ubm Ryo. The first, to persuade the man who guards the mountain, the second, obtain the core of the spirit beast, and the third, create a trap where the demonic cult and the Blade God's 6 martial clan would be attacked. That's the most ideal scheme, but all this would only be possible if that monster agrees. I can see it. While they were having a conversation, 16th leader Yan Yongin spoke while looking at the vast mountain. In the distance, the huge white peaks of Changbai mountain began to rise. If they followed the path, they would soon enter the mountain. I hope that he'll join our side. I hope he gets convinced. Whether the advance squad which left ahead of them succeeded in persuading him or not, they had to wait near the forest to know. The time to move forward. Mu Guqion, who was at the forefront, moving ahead, suddenly stopped. The other leaders looked at him, hoping he would tell them why he stopped, but a disgusting smell that wafted through the wind filled their noses. What is this? Smells like blood. There was no way that they didn't know the smell of blood. The smell of blood which greeted them gave them an ominous feeling. Hong Palwu was the one who spoke. Something seems to be wrong. This is blood. It seemed 1 or 2 people had died, and it wasn't a nice smell. The people were worried. At the part where the mountain starts, something happened. Goo. Huh. This. Cha. The men who were in the lead grabbed their weapons at the sudden energy they felt. Everyone thought that it was their final moments. In the path they were supposed to walk, a strong aura and ominous energy. This is a terrible feeling. It was as if the forest was telling them, another step and I'll attack. However, advancing wouldn't be possible if they decided to head through the forest. Mugu Chion, the commander, raised his hand and commanded the troops. Move forward. Yes. As soon as the orders fell, something shocking happened. Thud. In the middle of the road which leads into the mountain, an unidentified person wearing a bamboo hat appeared. A great gust of wind blew around him, and the leaves on the trees seemed to rustle. Ween. At the unusual sight, Saint Gakyan mumbled in a trembling voice. East Challenger God.